What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock and Roll True Stories, and we're back with another Alice in Chains story. You guys seem to love these stories, and I love doing them. So let's talk about at least what I refer to as Alice in Chains' lost year, and that I want to refer to as 1994. So 1994 should have really been a huge year for Alice in Chains. The band completed a pretty extensive tour in late 93 to support their 92 album, Dirt, which was a huge hit. And the band would assemble in Seattle to finish up an EP that took about a week to write and record called Jar of Flies. And basically no rest for the wicked. Alice in Chains were set to tour with Metallica in the summer of 94 as well. So Alice in Chains would release Jar of Flies in late January, and it would go to #1 on the Billboard charts. Now the band also kicked off 1994 with a benefit show at the Hollywood Palladium, where they played some of the tracks off of their latest EP, as well as some songs from SAP as well. Now, it was believed around this time when Layne had relapsed and he had started using heroin again. So the entire show that did at the Fishbone benefit in January of 94 is up on YouTube. It's a pretty short set. They played about 4 songs total. They played Am I Inside, Brother, Nutshell, and No Excuses. Now, looking at some of the people whose friends that attended the show, and even from listening to it, the fans who attended the show were a little disappointed because it was a pretty short set, and the band didn't really play any of their big hits. You know, these songs off of Jar of Flies had just come out, so they didn't have time to really go up the charts, and a lot of that stuff was new to them. And according to one poster, they said, I had a friend who went to the show. The show was filled with heavy hitters like Primus and Porno for Pyros, and the crowd, he said, was expecting a mosh-filled set including some of the Dirt material, Damn That River, Them Bones, etc. Instead, in the middle of this, they came out and played this in preview of Jar of Flies. The crowd wasn't too pleased, and he said they even chucked some ice and cups at them at the end. Apparently, Jerry himself on Rockline pretty much said that it was not a very good show for them, and it was rather badly booked, and it was one of course, Layne's final performances in that period between 94 and 96. Now, you can look at some photos of Layne around this time. He's wearing those leather gloves covering his hands, which he wore a lot during 95 and 96. If you guys have read the Rolling Stone piece that was done on Layne, a lot of heroin addicts will sometimes inject their hands, so that's why maybe some people think he was wearing gloves to hide any kind of puncture marks on his hands. Now, during this time in 1994, between January up until the point they canceled their tour with Metallica, Layne did make some appearances during that time. He appeared on stage with Tool at the KISW-FM's Rockstock concert, where he performed the song Opiate with Tool. Now, according to one person who was at the show, they said that Layne looked sickly and he wore a wool ski mask to hide his face during the performance. And according to Rolling Stone, they also said in July of 94, Staley, along with Chris Cornell of Soundgarden and Peter Klett of Candlebox, were elected to Playgirl magazine's Rock and Roll Hall of Hunkdom, but Staley's appearance had already begun to deteriorate at that point. So in the summer of 94, the day before the start of the tour with Metallica, Alice nearly reached the end of their chain. At that time, Staley was in his throes of heroin addiction, and Sean Kinney was struggling with the bottle. So according to Rolling Stone, they said, we've just been going full force, just running at top speed with our eyes closed, says Cantrell, peering through half an empty glass of beer. We had been way too close for too long, and we were suffocating. We were like 4 plants trying to grow in the same pot. And things got worse when Staley, who according to Kinney had just returned from drug rehab, came to practice high, and in response, Kinney threw down his sticks and vowed to never play again with Staley. Cantrell concurred, and the tour was canceled, and the band parted ways for about 6 months. Now, sadly, for those fans wanting to see Alice in Chains open for Metallica, the band would end up being replaced by Candlebox instead. But James Hetfield of Metallica would actually go on to mock Layne Staley at a 1994 performance because of him having to withdraw due to his drug issues at the time. Here's the clip.
So you want to hear a new song? Well, this song is one that Jason wrote. Is that all right? That scares me. It's a Jason song, so he's going to have to sing it. Is that okay? Anyway.
Anyway, I didn't know Jason wrote that one. Fuck, he's cooler than we all thought, everyone. But this here is, Why did you throw that at me? I have a question. Why did you throw that at me? Why? I thought you want... You guys want to throw shit? We'll walk off the stage, you can throw all the shit you want. We're here to play some music, not to fucking look out for crap like this, man. I know you guys are getting naked and all that shit, having some fun out there, but we play a lot better when we don't have to look at shit flying at us, okay? But I think you guys want us to play pretty good, don't you? That's why we're fucking here. So this here is Jason's song, and don't make...
According to Sean Kinney, he said nobody was being honest with each other back then, seconds after exhaling a cloud of marijuana smoke he gave during the interview. He said if we'd kept going, there was a good chance we would have self-destructed on the road, and we definitely didn't want things to happen in public. And it's kind of ironic because you look at some bands like Guns N' Roses back in the 80s when they were first starting out, their manager was encouraged to actually put them on the road because even though they had their own drug problems, he figured that if they were all in the same tour bus together, they were all sharing the same space, as a manager, it would be a lot easier to keep a handle on these guys and stop them from doing harm to themselves. But in this case, Alice in Chains' management decided, hey, we got to keep these guys off the road and they got to get better. Now, there was even an instance that probably a lot of Alice in Chains fans haven't heard of. So back in 1994, when Layne was in rehab, Guns N' Roses' former drummer Steven Adler wrote a book, and he talked about going to the same rehab as Layne and actually running into him. So according to Rolling Stone magazine, in the months that followed the band's breakup, the band members, of course, went their separate ways, and they went through their stages of grief that accompany loss, denial, anger, depression, and finally acceptance. Staley recalled, at first I was dumbfounded, mumbling like someone awakened by a late night phone call. He said, I just sat on my couch staring at the TV and getting drunk every day. He said, when we first got together as a band, we were all brothers. We lived in the same house and we partied together and drank as much as each other. But then we started to split apart and went different ways, and we felt like we were betraying each other. And Layne also commented on all the crazy rumors that were going around the mid-90s when people became more aware of his heroin use. And basically, he said, I found out through the internet that I have AIDS, says Staley. I learned I was dead. Where else would I find out these things? I don't see a doctor regularly, and I was in San Francisco at Lollapalooza, and this girl walked up to me and said, stop, like she's seen a ghost. She said, you're not dead. And I said, no, you're right. Wow. So during their time apart, of course, Staley would go record a record with Mad Season, which was his side project with Pearl Jam guitarist Mike McCready and Screaming Trees drummer Barrett Martin. Now, Layne would also take some time to work with another group that maybe you guys aren't familiar with. There was a band called Second Coming, and Layne performed with them on stage at Seattle's Color Box in 1994. The video's up on YouTube if you want to go check it out. And there's also the music video featuring Layne Staley as well. The song is called It's Coming After, and you guys can also go check that out. And of course, Layne wasn't the only guy to go do some stuff on the side. We also had the other members joining other bands and performing on other records too. And Mike Inez did some scuba diving, did a little bit of vacationing, and he, of course, worked with Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash on his first Snake Pit record, It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, but he wouldn't end up touring with Snake Pit. And Sean Kinney basically snowboarded and recorded a track with Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic, Kim Tall, and Johnny Cash for the Willie Nelson tribute record, Twisted Willie. And Jerry, who writes most of the band's music, holed himself up at his rural home outside of Seattle and wrote riffs initially intended for a solo record, but by January of 95, things seemed to be moving again with Alice in Chains' camp. He was working out some material with Sean Kinney and Mike Inez, and 4 months later, they would eventually invite Layne Staley back into the fold, and the band would begin working on their self-titled record, Alice in Chains. So that concludes today's video, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Were you guys following Alice in Chains back in 1994, and did the year kind of break down for you when you found out they weren't opening for Metallica on that summer tour? Put your comments down below and let me know which stories you'd like to see explored on future episodes of Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.